Now, I would like to bring to your attention this distinction and this duality of the self-concept and the social concept. Said another way, the self is also synonymous with the individual concept. Now, there are these two worlds that are at play, which are vying for power. Now, the social world is like this social dream, which a lot of times we sell our soul to. An example of this is the whole campaign of marketing, which seeks to tell us what we need. Says, you need a Ferrari, or you need a BMW to get to work. You need to look cool in your friends. You need to wear these designer clothing. Now, the thing is, it's perfectly understandable and logical of just getting a Honda Civic. That would take us from point A to point B, take us to our destination. But it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to spend an extravagant amount of money to purchase something which will do the job for less money. The thing is, distinguishing between our self-concept and the social concept of the world helps us to live more pragmatically. In other words, it helps us live in a way that reflects a deeper spirit of who we actually are. Now, distinguishing between the self and the social concept helps us clarify our purpose. And it helps us pursue goals which actually reflect ones that speak to our soul. Now, as we learn more about this self-concept, that is our identity, the knowledge that we know about ourselves, that helps us break away from our chains. It helps us break away from people who are not actually enhancing us. It helps us break away from false ideas that don't actually describe who we are today. So, the important thing here is that you can imagine, at least I see a lot of times at the place where I work, because I work in the business computer labs at Cal State Northridge University, is there's this idea that is kind of deeply implanted into the minds of several people I've come across that, I'm going to get this job that pays $80,000, I'm going to work 70, 80 hours a week, and then I'm going to have, nice 2 weeks of vacation, but it's just this thing, this daily routine of just living for that vacation, just day after day after day after day, the same routine. Not a whole lot of time for self-discovery. So, how can we make this leap from going from the societal dream to our own personal dream? Well, first we have to uproot all the sources of negativity. As we start to uproot those sources of negativity, it begins to give us a clearer view of our own humanity. Now, I'll be talking about the self and the social concept more pervasively through my future videos, but now that I have given you an inkling of the idea, it helps to clarify the air. Now, I want to talk about several roadblocks that can prevent this kind of self-realization of discovering who you are and elucidating this self-concept. Now, labels. For example, one label that haunted me at every step was this idea that I'm unintelligent. Now, this idea affected me so deeply that when I would go to a classroom setting, I would never raise my hand. I would never ask questions. So it stifled my pursuit and curiosity for greater self-awareness and greater knowledge of the world. So labels can be very limiting. There's this great quote, "What labels me negates me." In other words, what labels my humanity diminishes the spirit of who I actually am. Thinking about it a different way, words are loaded pistols. That is to say that they can fire off at any moment and destroy us. So we have to have a greater sensitivity and a greater awareness of how powerful words actually are. Because in some sense, when you go about the task of defining yourself, you'll use the medium of words. These words will create ideas in your mind. But the more accurately you can use your language, the more accurate knowledge you have about yourself, the more you can bridge these two worlds and to have a greater self-concept. Another thing is false ideas. My false idea was, oh, I'm unintelligent. But you can see how it was an anchor that held me back. So as you start to tend the garden of your mind and uproot these weeds of falsity, that greater clarity begins to peer through. Just like the clouds moving out of the way of the sun's luminosity. Things start to become more clear. The other thing I want to talk about is asking others their opinion of you. Now, this is important because when you ask someone the question, what do you think of me? You give them so much power over your reality. But the thing is, there's a fundamental flaw. There is a fallacy in asking that question. The fallacy is that they only know who you are externally. They don't know who you are internally. Now, what does this mean? This means that their diagnosis of your persona is only what they have told you, and it's impossible to know what's inside someone's mind. So when someone asks you the question, or when somebody tells you what they think of you, they don't know the battles that you fought behind your head. They don't know necessarily your values. All they know is the experiences that they've told you and the observations they've been able to make. So they're actually making a very limited diagnosis of your persona. So ultimately, what does this mean? This means that when you ask someone for their opinion of you, you're giving them an invitation to add negativity to your life. That's not to say that somebody can't have an accurate assessment of who you are, or add positivity to your life. But the thing is, you give them the reins of so much power when you do that, that it bodes the question of why would you even put yourself in a compromised position of that sort? Now, reevaluation. So, reevaluation is this idea of reevaluating all of the beliefs and the truths that we know about ourselves. Now, you could imagine the example of a little girl who is told by her mother, don't wear your hair long, it doesn't look good. That idea might stick with her throughout the majority of her life. But until she goes about reevaluating that idea, maybe growing her hair out long and seeing how it looks for her, in her own personal, self-individual concept, she'll never know. And so this is how we live our days. We live our days attached to concepts which aren't true, which are false, which are injected by labels of society. When society doesn't understand you, it will label you. For example, I was labeled as an ADHD student, someone who was handicapped by the attention deficit disorder. Now the thing is, I started to see that just because I didn't fit into the normalcy of society and the traditional orthodox ways of thinking and acting and responding in the classroom setting, that the definition society gave me wasn't true. It was just a limited diagnosis from the experiential observations that they had. They didn't actually know what was going on in my mind until I reevaluated the information that I was told. Going back to the little girl example, her mother had told her something that stuck with her and limited her. So it doesn't matter if it's from a friend, an acquaintance, or a family member. Every single one of our beliefs about our personal nature needs to be reevaluated. Now, this is the power of defining yourself. It means bringing all of this into a perfect stream of thought. It means seeing so lucidly into the nature of reality and yourself that no one could possibly ever sell you on something that doesn't actually speak to you. Because you know so deeply who you are that you have built yourself an immunity against the evils of the world. Thank you.